A 6-year-old girl dials her mother's first contact, never knowing she's calling a Mafia boss who believes his entire family died years ago. But when he hears her trembling voice whisper, "Mama won't wake up," and the bad men came again, everything he thought he buried explodes back to life. What happens next will shatter every truth, expose every betrayal, and reunite a love that refused to die. Welcome back to Heartwoven Tales. I'm your storyteller, Selena. I'm so happy you're here with me today. I want to know, where are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. Today we have a story that will take you on an emotional journey, and I promise, the last chapter will touch your heart like never before. So make sure you watch till the very end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story that moves your soul. Now let's dive in. Dust hung in the air like a heavy curtain, drifting slowly through the dim room where 6-year-old Leah knelt beside her mother's motionless body. The blast from the rival attack had blown the safe house apart, walls cracked, shelves collapsed, and the faint smell of smoke still lingered sharp in the back of her throat. Leah's tiny hands, scraped and trembling, pressed desperately against her mother's shoulder as she shook her gently, begging for any sign of movement. Elena's skin felt colder than Leah expected, far too cold for a mother who never failed to wrap her children in warmth. Fear crawled up the little girl's spine as she brushed aside strands of her mother's dusty hair, revealing a bruise spreading across her temple. Leah didn't know what caused it, only that Mama wasn't waking up, and nothing in her young heart was prepared for that kind of terror. Her 4-year-old twin brothers crouched behind her, their frightened whimpers echoing in the hollow silence. One clutched a broken toy car, the other kept rubbing his eyes with tiny fists, trying not to cry but failing each time another piece of the ceiling groaned above them. Leah turned her head for just a moment, forcing a trembling smile for them, one she didn't feel, because Mama always said the twins followed her emotions. "It's okay. I'm here," she whispered, though her stomach knotted so tightly it hurt. She had never felt so small, so responsible, so terrified of doing the wrong thing. With trembling fingers, she reached toward her mother's coat pocket where she knew the phone was kept. Elena had always been protective of that phone, always keeping it close, always hiding it when strangers passed by. She had told Leah only once, never call anyone except the first name on the list if something awful ever happened. Leah prayed with all her might that she was doing the right thing as she pulled the cracked phone out and pressed the power button. The screen flickered weakly, light shining across her soot-covered fingers. When the contact list opened, her eyes landed on a name she didn't recognize: Aiden. The letters felt heavy, important, like something her mother feared and cherished at the same time. Leah hesitated, her heart thudding loudly in her ears. She didn't know who this man was. She only knew that Mama whispered that name on nights she thought the children were asleep, whispered it with a sadness that made Leah want to crawl into her arms and ask why Mama's voice shook. She had never asked. She only remembered the way Elena pressed that name against her lips, as if speaking it hurt and healed her at once. That memory nudged Leah's small thumb into tapping the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, each second stretching painfully long as the twins pressed closer to her, seeking comfort. When the line finally connected, Leah heard a deep, steady breath on the other end. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked, trapped behind fear and exhaustion. "Sir," she finally whispered, barely more than a trembling breath. "Everything is gone. Mama won't wake up. And my brothers, they need food." A tear slid down her cheek, tracing a clean line through the ash on her face. She hated how weak she sounded, but her chest felt too heavy to pretend she was brave. On the other side of the call, silence stretched wide, an unfamiliar, sharp silence that made Leah wonder if she had done something wrong. She didn't know that her small, cracking voice had struck Aiden like a blow to the heart. She couldn't see how he stood frozen, gripping the phone in disbelief as her words rippled through memories he'd buried under grief. She didn't know he had waited 4 years believing his pregnant wife died with their unborn children, and now, a little girl with her mother's softness in her voice had just shattered that certainty. Leah swallowed hard and added in an even quieter whisper, "Please help us." She didn't know what else to say. She didn't know if the man on the phone was kind or dangerous or someone Mama feared. She only knew they were alone, and the world outside the half-collapsed door was filled with men who had destroyed their home without hesitation. And she knew Mama trusted this name. That was enough. Before Aiden could ask anything, before Leah could explain where she was, a sudden thump echoed through the hall. Heavy footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming closer. Leah's heart lurched into her throat. She slapped a hand over the speaker and quickly hid the phone under her dress, stuffing it beneath the fabric as her breath caught painfully. Her brothers froze, their small bodies trembling against her back. Leah didn't even dare blink. She held her breath so tightly her chest ached, praying, with every terrified beat of her young heart, that the men who destroyed their safe house hadn't followed the sound of her voice. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. Another board creaked. A soft scrape of a boot shifted dust. A shadow stretched across the floor. Silence wrapped around them, suffocating and cold. Leah's fingers curled around the hidden phone, desperate to keep it from slipping. She could hear her pulse pounding in her ears, could feel her brothers press their faces against her spine. She didn't know if the men were waiting, listening, deciding. All she could do was stay perfectly still, praying they would move on. A sudden crack from the collapsing ceiling made her flinch, just enough for the hem of her dress to twitch. The shadow outside the door shifted, her breath hitched, and then silence again. Long, horrible silence. Minutes passed like hours before the shadow finally withdrew, footsteps fading into the distance. When Leah finally dared to breathe, her hands were shaking so badly she thought she might drop the phone. She slowly lifted the dress fabric and pulled the device close to her ear, praying the man was still there. But the call had already cut. Only the emptiness of a dead line answered her. Aiden's voice, faint and fading, echoed weakly before disappearing entirely. He whispered her name into an empty connection, fear curling in his chest as her silence spread across the line. And Leah was left alone in the ruins, holding the phone that held her last fragile thread of hope, uncertain if help was coming, or if she had just whispered her fear into the world for nothing, when suddenly a chilling, deliberate laugh echoed from the shadows outside, freezing her blood in an instant, letting her know that the danger had never left and whatever had destroyed their safe house was still watching her every move. The echo of that haunting laugh still lingered in Aiden's mind as he slammed the office door behind him, the sound of his own heartbeat drowning out every other noise in the room. The phone sat on his desk, abandoned, yet it burned in his memory like molten fire. Leah's trembling voice, so small and fragile, calling him sir and begging for her mother, was impossible to ignore. He felt frozen, as if time had stopped, yet every nerve in his body screamed that he had to move. 2 other voices had come through the call, young and fearful, the unmistakable cries of boys that matched the age of the twins he had never met, the children he had mourned before they were even born. A suffocating hope rose in his chest, a dangerous kind of hope he hadn't dared feel in 4 years. It was fragile, almost unbearable, but it wrapped around his heart with the weight of undeniable truth. Could it be? Had fate truly preserved a fragment of the life he thought lost forever? Aiden's hands trembled as he reached for his gun and keys. It wasn't fear that made his grip unsteady. It was recognition of the gentleness in that child's voice. A gentleness he knew so well because it had once belonged to Elena. Memories flashed in his mind with painful clarity. The way she smiled at him in quiet moments, the softness in her voice even when they argued, the dreams they whispered to each other late at night about the children they would raise. His pulse accelerated as he remembered the hidden box in his safe, the one with the ultrasound photos, the sonograms wrapped in plastic, the names they had chosen but never had the chance to use, the home they had imagined but never built. Every forgotten hope, every silent wish he had buried beneath grief, came rushing back with the sound of Leah's words. "Mama said call you." She had said it. Elena had never forgotten him. She had kept his number all these years, hidden and protected. She had survived. She was alive. Aiden's mind raced, grasping at the fragile strands of this new reality. If Elena had survived, she'd been running from something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The man or men who had tried to destroy his family 4 years ago might still be out there, hunting her, hunting them. He felt the icy grip of dread tighten around his chest. Every second he wasted could cost them their lives, and yet he couldn't move fast enough. The phone call had cracked open a part of him he had sealed shut with grief and anger, leaving a hollow ache that demanded action. He shoved the memory of his office, the paperwork, the meetings, all of it aside. Nothing mattered except reaching her before it was too late. He ran to the garage, each step echoing like thunder in the empty corridors of his estate. The convoy was ready, as always. Armored vehicles lined up and engines idling. Men he trusted with his life were already sliding into position, their faces tense, mirrors of his own urgency. He barely noticed them, barely noticed anything beyond the memory of Leah's voice and the knowledge that his children, his real children, were out there, alive and terrified. His hands gripped the steering wheel of his black SUV so tightly that his knuckles turned white, yet his vision narrowed, focusing only on the streets ahead. Every red light, every honking car, every passerby seemed to slow him down, and yet he pushed forward, the engine roaring as if it carried the weight of all 4 lost years on its shoulders. The streets of the city blurred past as he drove, weaving through traffic with precision born of instinct and desperation. He imagined Leah's small hands hiding the phone beneath her dress, the way her brothers had pressed against her back, the courage it must have taken for a 6-year-old to do what she did. A pain gripped his chest as he realized the depth of the danger they were in. Whoever had destroyed the safe house had found them. Whoever had followed them had already made the first move. His mind flicked to every enemy he had ever made, every rival who had coveted his empire. Could one of them have discovered Elena's location after all these years? The thought made his blood run cold. He would not allow them to touch his family. Not this time. Not ever. The memories came faster now, unrelenting. 4 years ago, when the explosion had taken Elena and the unborn twins from him, he had felt the world crumble under his feet. He had mourned them, celebrated fake funerals, declared their deaths with a stone-cold face to the world, and yet inside, a part of him had never truly let go. And now, with Leah's voice echoing in his mind, that part surged to the surface, consuming every rational thought. He saw her face in his imagination, the way her small lips had trembled, the way her voice had begged for help. He imagined the twins crying behind her, and a fire ignited in him, burning brighter than any fear, any caution, any grief he had carried. He reached for his gun instinctively, checking its weight in his hand, feeling its familiar comfort and cold certainty. But even as he fastened his seatbelt, even as the convoy began moving with lethal precision, he couldn't shake the thought that time was slipping through his fingers. Every second counted. Every street corner might hold an enemy waiting to strike. Every shadow could be watching. The city had never felt more hostile, more alive with danger than it did in that moment. And he understood, with a clarity that made his chest ache, that the enemy wasn't just after Elena. They were after the children, too. They were after the future he thought he had lost, the family he thought he would never hold. That thought alone sharpened his senses, made every heartbeat feel like a drum. counting down to disaster. The radio crackled with his men confirming positions, but he barely heard them. His mind was elsewhere, on the girl's voice, the boy's cries, the soft, unmistakable traces of Elena in every syllable. He remembered the ultrasound photos, tucked away in a locked drawer, the tiny forms of their unborn children frozen in film, faces they had never seen but names they had already chosen. The irony and cruelty of it made his chest tighten. The world had tried to steal from him, to erase the life he had loved so completely. And now, after all this time, it had returned in fragments, a child's voice, a mother's cry, a family still alive, still needing him. And yet, he had no idea where they were, no idea what condition they were in, and no guarantee that they would survive until he reached them. A shadow of fear crept over him, mingled with the almost unbearable hope. He had to be precise. He had to be fast. Every intersection, every turn, every speeding car was a potential threat. He imagined the safe house, its walls splintered, dust settling on broken furniture, the twins hiding behind their sister as she tried to protect them. His fists clenched around the steering wheel, nails biting into leather as he pushed the engine harder, navigating the streets with a combination of desperation and instinct. Every red light he ignored, every horn blaring in his ears, every scream from a nearby alley made him more aware of the fragility of the moment. He could lose them before he even saw them. Memories of Elena, her courage, her intelligence, her quiet defiance, flooded him. She had survived this long in the shadows, moving constantly, hiding from enemies that Aiden had only begun to suspect existed. She'd kept his number, had trusted him even when she had to vanish from his life completely. That trust was sacred, unbreakable, and it drove him forward with a singular purpose: to reach them before it was too late. Every light that flashed on the dashboard, every engine that roared past, every shadow flickering in the corners of his eyes reminded him that danger could be anywhere, that death could be following just steps behind. And yet, he refused to slow, refused to hesitate, because hesitation meant losing them all again. The city stretched on endlessly, streets twisting in ways that seemed to mock him, as if time itself conspired to keep him from the children. His breath came in harsh, ragged bursts, his knuckles white, his mind a chaotic storm of fear, hope, and rage. Every traffic signal, every pedestrian, every car he swerved past was a gamble, a test of skill and luck. And beneath it all, Leah's soft, terrified voice echoed in his mind, carrying with it the weight of a truth he had never expected, a truth that could shatter or save him. "Mama said call you." The words repeated again and again like a mantra, like a promise, like a bullet piercing through 4 years of grief. And somewhere deep inside, a single question clawed at him, urgent and terrifying. Would he get there in time? Or would this miracle slip through his fingers before he could even touch it? The black SUV screeched to a halt in front of the partially destroyed safe house, dust and smoke swirling violently in the night air, blurring the edges of the ruined walls. Aiden's chest heaved as he slid out, his eyes scanning the debris-strewn yard with desperate precision. His men fanned out, weapons raised, moving with the kind of silent efficiency born of years in the shadows, trained to anticipate danger even in the most chaotic of places. Every shattered window, every splintered doorframe, every blackened corner seemed to whisper threats, and Aiden felt the weight of 4 years of grief pressing down on him. This was the moment he had been chasing, the moment that could either restore the life he thought lost or shatter it completely. Through the smoke and dust, he saw a small figure crouched over another, a tiny silhouette attempting to cover something, or someone, with what little warmth she could provide. Leah's small hands trembled as she pressed a tattered jacket over her mother's frail form, whispering words too quiet to be heard over the howling wind. Her twin brothers clung to her sides, shivering with cold and terror, each sob a jagged stab in the dark night. Aiden's throat tightened. His daughter. The girl he had only heard in a phone call but now saw with his own eyes. His heart pounded in a rhythm he hadn't known for years, erratic and fierce, demanding he close the distance between them as though his life depended on it, which in truth it did. Leah's wide, frightened eyes met his the moment he stepped closer. There was recognition there, a spark of memory she never consciously held, as if some fragment of the life she had never lived still lingered in her soul. Her small lips parted, and she whispered with a trembling certainty, "Mama draws your face." The words landed on him like a hammer to the chest. It was more than recognition, it was proof. The realization that the girl before him was his own flesh and blood, and that she had been holding on through every terror and uncertainty, stole his breath and left him momentarily frozen. Aiden dropped to his knees beside Elena, his fingers shaking as they brushed strands of dust-streaked hair from her face. He memorized every line, every contour, every subtle mark that bore the years of struggle and survival. She looked like Elena, thin, fragile, exhausted, but undeniably, unmistakably her. The sight brought both a shattering ache and a trembling surge of relief. He reached for her pulse with the utmost delicacy, his fingers praying against the skin that he would feel life. And when he felt it, faint but undeniably there, a sob tore itself from the depths of his chest. She was alive. Against every calculation, every prediction of loss and grief, she was alive. His eyes then moved to the twins, small figures clinging to Leah's arms like they were tethered to her very soul. He reached for them slowly, ensuring not to startle them, and they instinctively wrapped their tiny hands around his shoulders as if they had always known him. His heart stuttered at the intimacy of that connection, at the miracle of their recognition. He whispered Elena's name again, as if saying it aloud could somehow bridge the gap of lost years. And she stirred slightly, a shallow blink and a weak, almost imperceptible smile marking her slow return to consciousness. But the moment of fragile peace shattered in an instant. A bullet slammed into the window beside his head, sending splinters raining down like deadly rain. Leah screamed, the sound raw and piercing, and Aiden reacted on pure instinct. He pulled her and the twins close, pressing their small bodies against his own, shielding them with his arms as another shot ricocheted off the walls with terrifying proximity. Dust and glass fell around them like hail, and his heart leapt into his throat. Someone had followed them, someone who knew exactly where they were, someone whose intent was nothing short of annihilation. The men flanking him returned fire, their precise shots echoing against the walls and shattered furniture, a counterpoint of violence to the desperate protection he offered his family. Aiden's hands shook, adrenaline and fury merging into a single, almost unbearable intensity. Every sense was heightened, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. The air smelled of gunpowder, smoke, and fear, a cocktail that made his head spin and his resolve sharpen in equal measure. He could not fail. He would not fail, not now, not after 4 years of unimaginable torment, not after the voice of a child had brought back the family he had thought lost forever. Leah clung to him tightly, her small body trembling as he held her close. The twins buried their faces into his chest, gripping the fabric of his coat as though it were a lifeline. Aiden whispered reassurances. He wasn't sure he fully believed himself. "It's okay. I've got you. You're safe now." But even as he spoke, he knew the danger was far from over. Every second spent here increased the likelihood that the people who had tracked them would strike again, faster and deadlier than before. Elena's eyes fluttered open for the first time in hours, confusion and fear mingling with recognition as she saw Aiden kneeling beside her, their children pressed to his chest. Weak as she was, she tried to move, to sit up, but Aiden gently pushed her back, his voice low and commanding. "Stay still. You're safe now, but we need to move quickly." Her lips quivered as she tried to speak, but the words faltered under the weight of exhaustion and relief. Aiden pressed a hand to her cheek, feeling the warmth that had returned. Faint but undeniable, and the connection, the bond that had survived years of deception and danger, strengthened with every heartbeat. Suddenly, another shot rang out, closer this time, the crack of the bullet splitting the night with deafening precision. Leah screamed again, tiny hands digging into his chest, and the twins shrank closer, their little hearts pounding in perfect synchrony with the terror in his own. Aiden's men reacted instantly, covering him and the family, firing with lethal efficiency while he scanned every angle for the threat. Shadows shifted in the corners, smoke curled from the wreckage, and the night seemed alive with the presence of hunters, moving silently, waiting for the moment to strike again. Every step toward the ambulance was a battle against both fear and time. He lifted the twins, one in each arm, and Leah held tightly to his wrist as they moved, the small convoy forming a protective barrier around them. The shattered glass crunched beneath his boots, the air stung with dust and gunpowder, and yet he pushed forward, determined that nothing would separate him from the family he had almost lost forever. A flash of movement in the ruins caught his eye. Someone ducking, reloading, preparing to strike. His pulse leapt, his voice carried over the chaos, low and deadly. "Move now!" His men obeyed without hesitation, shielding the path as he carried the children, feeling the weight of both their lives and the memories of years lost. Each breath was shallow, each heartbeat a drum of warning, every nerve alive to danger. The ambulance loomed ahead, its doors open and ready, but the path was far from clear. Bullets pinged against metal, ricocheted off walls, and the acrid smell of smoke and blood filled the air. Leah whimpered, and Aiden's chest tightened at the sound. He bent to her level, his lips barely brushing her forehead as he whispered, "We're almost there, just a little further." Her small nod was almost imperceptible, but it carried more courage than he had ever witnessed from a child. As the first of his men ushered Elena onto a stretcher, a shadow emerged from the wreckage, moving with deadly precision. Another shot tore through the air, striking dangerously close to Aiden's head. He froze for a fraction of a second, heart hammering, before spinning, gun in hand, prepared to confront whoever dared threaten them. The night seemed to hold its breath as he scanned the ruins, adrenaline surging through every vein. The moment stretched, frozen between past and present, memory and reality, until another whisper of movement told him the attacker was still there, still hungry, still intent on destruction. Aiden's jaw tightened. This was no random raid, no petty rival. This was personal. Someone had tracked them, watched them, and now wanted to finish what they had started. He glanced at the children, their eyes wide and glistening with fear, and felt a protective fury ignite inside him. The bond he had lost, the family he had almost been torn from forever, pulsed through every nerve. He realized with sharp, sudden clarity that this fight was only beginning, and that the night held more danger than he could yet perceive. The ruins seemed to close in around them, every shadow a threat, every sound a potential death sentence. And as another bullet struck the wall mere inches from the ambulance, Aiden understood the terrifying truth. The nightmare was far from over, and the enemy had only just revealed the first layer of their relentless hunt. 4. The night air was thick with smoke and gunpowder, each breath of it burning in Aiden's lungs as he guided Elena and the children toward the armored convoy. The crunch of debris beneath his boots was the only sound he noticed, until a subtle movement in the shadows drew his attention. Time seemed to slow, every second stretching as he turned his head. His stomach dropped when the figure stepped forward, emerging from the dark like a phantom. Damien. The one man he had trusted above all others, the man who had held him upright when grief threatened to swallow him whole, the man he had considered a brother in every sense. And now, standing there with a cold smirk etched across his face, Damien carried a weapon pointed toward them, every gesture calculated, every movement dripping with malice. "You weren't supposed to see them again," Damien said, his voice low and lethal, carrying the weight of betrayal like a blade across Aiden's chest. The words struck with the precision of a bullet, leaving Aiden momentarily frozen. His mind raced back to that explosion, the sudden vanishing of Elena, the carefully staged accident, the funeral held in such a rush that no one questioned its legitimacy. Every memory that had haunted him for 4 years suddenly slashed across his heart with cruel clarity. Damien had orchestrated it all. Every lie, every staged tragedy, every moment of unbearable grief Aiden had endured had been part of a meticulously executed plan to take everything from him. Elena, weak but conscious, instinctively pressed closer to the children, her eyes widening as she recognized the man standing in front of them. Aiden's chest tightened as he felt the enormity of the betrayal. The woman he loved had survived, had hidden from the man who had destroyed their lives, and now, after years of solitude and constant danger, she was exposed once again to the treachery of someone who knew them better than anyone else. Damien's smile widened, cold and merciless, as he raised his gun with deliberate slowness, a predator savoring the terror he inflicted. "A man who believes his family is dead is easier to control," he sneered, the words dripping with venom. Rage surged through Aiden's veins, threatening to consume every rational thought. Every year of sorrow, every sleepless night, every fear he had felt for the imagined loss of his children ignited like wildfire within him. But Leah's small hand clinging to his coat stopped him, grounding him, reminding him of what truly mattered. The children, innocent and terrified, were the center of his world now. And nothing, not even the man who had betrayed him most deeply, would take them from him. His gun rose in a controlled motion, his hand steady despite the fury burning in his chest. He fired a warning shot that cracked against the concrete wall with a deafening echo. Damien jerked back into the shadows, his smirk fading just enough to reveal a flash of calculation. The seconds stretched like hours as Aiden moved quickly, ushering Elena and the children into the armored vehicle. The convoy doors slammed shut behind them with a solid thud that resonated through the night. He climbed into the driver's seat with the twins secured against him. Leah pressed close to his side, her trembling small body a reminder of the stakes they faced. Elena lay across the seats, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Yet her eyes remained locked on Aiden, trusting him with everything she had left. The vehicles roared to life, engines growling as they barreled away from the shattered safe house, kicking up clouds of dust and ash behind them. But Damien's words lingered, a venomous whisper carried on the wind. "She won't survive long." The echo crawled into Aiden's mind, sending a chill down his spine that had nothing to do with the night air. Whoever Damien had become, whatever lengths he was willing to go to, he had knowledge and experience that made him deadly, and he was relentless. Aiden's hands tightened on the wheel, his knuckles white, every muscle in his body coiled and alert. He scanned the streets, watching for movement, aware that the enemy was no longer just a distant threat, but a predator, hunting them in real time. Every shadow could hide a sniper, every corner a trap. The convoy moved as one, armored and reinforced, but Aiden knew it was not enough. He could hear the children's small, frightened breaths, see the way Leah's fingers dug into his coat, the way the twins' tiny hands clutched him for reassurance. They were alive, but they were still in danger, and he had no time to hesitate. Every instinct screamed that Damien would pursue, that the man who had once been a friend now hunted them with intimate knowledge of their weaknesses. The streets seemed to stretch endlessly, each turn and alleyway a potential ambush, every car a potential threat. Aiden's mind replayed every memory he had of Damien, every shared plan, every strategy session, every moment of trust he had placed in him. How had it come to this? How could someone so close have orchestrated such cruelty, such calculated destruction? Rage and disbelief warred with fear and strategy as he guided the convoy through narrow streets, the children pressed close, Elena lying in fragile safety behind him. His thoughts flickered to Leah's voice on the phone, the first thread that had reignited hope in his heart. That hope now fueled him with a precision and ferocity he had never known, making every turn, every decision, every maneuver a calculated step toward survival. The night was punctuated by distant sounds, shouts, gunfire, tires skidding. Aiden's eyes scanned the shadows, trying to predict Damien's next move, knowing that any lapse could be fatal. The children whimpered softly, and he reached out instinctively to soothe them, murmuring reassurances he barely felt himself. "We're almost safe. We're almost there. Stay with me." Yet he knew that Damien's knowledge of his family, his patterns, his weaknesses, made every second dangerous. The realization that they were still being hunted, still vulnerable, gnawed at him like fire. Suddenly, a flash of movement on a distant rooftop caught his eye. He instinctively swerved. The armored convoy following his lead, tires skidding over debris-strewn streets. A thought slashed through his mind like a blade. Damien had planned for this. He had anticipated every escape route, every safe house, every possible maneuver. The man knew them intimately, and every decision Aiden made had to account for that terrifying familiarity. Elena's weak voice broke through his thoughts, barely audible. "Aiden, is he—" He cut her off gently, pressing a hand to her arm. "I've got you. I've got them. We're not stopping now." The children, sensing his resolve, clung tighter, their small bodies grounding him even as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Every sound, every flicker of light, every shadow became a signal, a potential threat, a warning that the hunt was far from over. Aiden's mind raced, calculating every move as the city's nightscape blurred past the armored windows. He felt the weight of 4 years of loss, grief, and longing pressing on him, each memory sharpening his focus. Damien's betrayal was a blade at his back, a constant reminder that no one was safe, that the enemy was closer than he had imagined. And yet, within that pressure, a determination solidified. He would protect this family. He would survive. And he would not allow Damien to destroy them again. But just as the first signs of dawn crept into the horizon, a shadow detached itself from the darkness behind them, moving swiftly, with intent. Aiden's stomach twisted. The chase had only begun. Damien was not done, and neither was the danger he represented. Every turn, every obstacle, every heartbeat now carried the weight of an inevitable confrontation. And in that instant, Aiden knew with unshakable certainty the fight to save his family had only just begun, and what awaited them ahead was more terrifying than anything he had faced before. The armored convoy barreled through the outskirts of the city, its heavy tires crushing debris underfoot as Aiden drove with an intensity born from desperation. Every glance in the rearview mirror was met with empty streets, but he knew better than to believe they were safe. Damien had knowledge of every route, every safe house, every back street they could attempt, and he would not relent. Aiden's hands gripped the wheel with a white-knuckled intensity, his knuckles trembling, every nerve alive to danger. The children nestled against him, their small bodies a fragile weight that tethered him to the urgency of the present. Leah's tiny voice whispered questions he could barely hear over the roar of the engine. "Papa, will we be okay?" Aiden's chest tightened, his mind swirling with a storm of emotion, relief, fear, rage, and hope all coalescing into a singular drive. "We will be," he murmured, though even he wasn't entirely sure. The weight of the years they had lost pressed on him, each moment of their absence clawing at his heart. The twins shifted against him, whimpering softly, and he could feel the tension in their small limbs, the remnants of years of fear etched into every gesture. He realized how small they were, how vulnerable, and how much he had to protect. The convoy approached a nondescript compound on the outskirts, tall walls hidden by the night, cameras and sensors glinting faintly under the moonlight. Aiden's private medical estate, the one place he trusted for absolute security, would be their sanctuary, at least for now. The vehicles rolled to a halt, engines ticking as they cooled, and his men moved swiftly, unloading the children and placing them in the care of trusted guardians he had stationed there months ago. Leah clung to his arm, tiny fingers digging into the fabric of his coat, while the twins pressed against his chest, seeking warmth and reassurance. Elena was lifted onto a stretcher by trained medics, her body frail, her breathing uneven. Aiden's heart constricted as he followed, every step a silent prayer that she would survive this latest ordeal. He remembered the phone call, her voice whispered through a trembling 6-year-old's lips, and the years lost to grief and uncertainty pressed on him with renewed force. The weight of 4 years apart, the birthdays he had missed, the nights he had imagined their cries echoing through empty rooms, each memory sharpened his resolve. Inside the medical wing, the sterile smell of antiseptic and the faint hum of machines filled the air. Aiden knelt beside the stretcher, brushing strands of hair from Elena's face, his fingers lingering over the faint warmth of her skin. His eyes scanned every bruise, every cut, every mark of the years she had survived alone. He felt both rage and sorrow, anger at the world that had forced them apart, and grief for the moments they would never reclaim. Yet through it all, a flicker of relief ignited in his chest. She was alive. She had endured. She had fought. And now, finally, they were together again. Leah crawled close, resting her small head on Aiden's arm. Her voice, barely above a whisper, carried a weight that hit him like a physical blow. "Mama kept your picture hidden under her pillow," she said, eyes wide and trembling. Aiden's throat tightened. The memory of Elena's love preserved in a secret gesture, piercing him more than any physical threat ever could. She had kept him alive in the only way she could, a fragile thread of hope carried through years of danger and solitude. The realization made his chest ache with longing and regret. He wrapped his arms around all 3 children, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against his, overwhelmed by the enormity of the years lost. Every milestone he had missed, every cry of hunger or fear they had endured without him, pressed against his mind like a weight he could not shake. He whispered to them, his voice soft but firm, promising safety, promising protection, promising that nothing would ever take them away again. Each word felt insufficient, but it was all he could offer in that moment of fragile reunion. Hours passed in tense stillness, Aiden's gaze never leaving the operating room doors as the surgeons worked tirelessly on Elena. The children, exhausted from the terror and adrenaline, curled up against him, their small bodies rising and falling with each fragile breath. Leah's hand found his, gripping it with a quiet determination that mirrored his own, as though she too understood the stakes of this fragile piece. Aiden felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders more heavily than ever before. He would make up for every stolen moment. He would protect them with everything he had, every fiber of his being. Finally, the doors opened slowly. Elena's eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain and disorientation. The instant she saw Aiden, tears welled and spilled over her lashes, tracing gentle rivers down her cheeks. "You're real," she whispered, her voice broken, trembling with the weight of grief and disbelief. of hope deferred for far too long. Aiden knelt beside her, taking her hand gently, feeling the warmth and life he had feared lost forever. "I never stopped loving you. I thought I lost you forever," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Elena's lips quivered as she spoke, recounting the horrors of the years she had endured in his absence. Damien had hunted her relentlessly once she uncovered the truth about the staged accident, forcing her to vanish completely. She had faked her death to protect their unborn children, moving ceaselessly from place to place, never stopping, never letting anyone trace her steps. Every memory, every hardship, every moment of isolation she had endured poured from her in fragmented sentences, raw and painful. Aiden listened, the weight of her suffering settling on his chest like a physical burden. They held each other quietly for a moment, the only sounds the soft beeping of machines and the muted breaths of children curled at their sides. Every touch, every glance, every whispered word carried the weight of years lost and hope restored. Yet even in this fragile reprieve, a flicker of danger lingered. Aiden's instincts, honed over decades, prickled with the sense that peace was still a fragile illusion. Suddenly, the sharp wail of alarms cut through the air, urgent and piercing, a signal that shattered the quiet. The estate's security systems blared, lights flashing red, warning of intrusion. Aiden's head snapped up, eyes darting to the monitors that displayed approaching vehicles and shadowed figures converging on the estate. Damien had arrived. His presence was an immediate threat, a reminder that the man who had betrayed them once would not stop until he had succeeded. Aiden's chest tightened, adrenaline surging through his veins once again. He pressed a hand to Elena's shoulder, grounding her while simultaneously preparing for action. The children sensed the tension, their small bodies pressing closer to him, trembling as the sound of alarms and approaching danger filled the room. Aiden's mind raced, calculating every move, every possible strategy, every chance to protect the family he had fought so hard to reclaim. Through the windows, he could see armored vehicles approaching, shadowed figures moving with precision, intent etched into every motion. Damien's reach was vast, his knowledge of Aiden's habits and tactics dangerous beyond measure. Yet despite the fear, Aiden felt a fierce surge of determination. He would not let them take Elena. He would not let them touch the children. Every second of fear and loss had led to this moment, and he was ready to confront it with every ounce of strength and cunning he possessed. The alarms continued to wail, echoing through the estate's halls, a symphony of warning that sent shivers down the spines of all who heard it. Aiden's eyes met Elena's, his expression firm and resolute, silently conveying the promise that they would survive this together. Leah clutched his coat tighter, twins pressing against his chest, and he could feel their fear, their hope, their trust. Every heartbeat was synchronized with his own, each pulse a reminder of what he had to protect at all costs. The moment stretched, every second charged with anticipation, every shadow a potential threat, every noise a possible attack. Aiden's breath hitched as he realized the true magnitude of the danger. They were surrounded by enemies who knew them intimately, enemies who would not relent. And yet, in that tension, a quiet, unshakable determination solidified within him. They had survived so much already. They would survive this too. But as he scanned the approaching figures, his mind raced with the inevitable truth. Damien's arrival meant the fight was far from over. Every strategy, every plan, every protective measure would be tested. And in the silence between alarms, a chilling certainty sank deep into his chest. The next hours would decide the fate of the family he had finally reclaimed, and failure was not an option. The alarm still shrieked in the distance as Aiden grabbed Elena, whose body trembled from weakness and blood loss. Lifting her into his arms with a determination born of desperation. The twins clung to his shoulders, their tiny fingers digging into his coat, while Leah guided them both through the reinforced passageway he had prepared in advance, a narrow, dim corridor lined with hidden exits and emergency lighting, a lifeline in a night consumed by fire and betrayal. Every echo of footsteps behind them pressed on his mind, every creak and groan of the old building a reminder that Damien's men were closing in. He whispered to Elena, his voice low but firm, "Hold on. I'm not leaving anyone behind. I promise we get through this together." Elena's breath came in shallow gasps, and she pressed her forehead to his chest, drawing what little strength she could from his presence. Leah, despite her fatigue and terror, gripped her brother's hand with the courage only a child fighting for survival could summon, her small steps careful but resolute. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and the acrid tang of fire, stinging their eyes and burning their lungs, but Aiden refused to slow down. Each step was measured, deliberate and purposeful. He could not afford a single mistake. Behind him, shadows moved with lethal intent. Aiden paused just long enough to glance over his shoulder. One of Damien's men had slipped ahead of the others, rifle aimed, eyes cold and calculating. Instincts honed over years of living in a world of violence flared, and Aiden fired, the sharp crack echoing off the corridor walls. The man went down, but the sound alerted the others, and Aiden knew they were now in a full-blown chase. Every corner turned, held potential danger. Every doorway a trap. His mind raced, calculating, predicting, planning, but every second brought new chaos. Elena clutched the twin against her chest, her face pale and slick with sweat, while Leah urged the other twin forward, her small frame tense with terror, yet brimming with determination. Aiden's heart ached as he watched his daughter take charge, mirroring the strength he had always hoped to see in her. He whispered encouragement, his voice rough with emotion, "Stay close. Don't let go of each other. Keep moving." The twins whimpered but obeyed, their small hands holding tightly to what remained of family and hope. The sounds of gunfire grew louder behind them, echoing like a storm in the enclosed space of the passageway. Aiden's breath came in harsh, rapid bursts, adrenaline fueling his every movement. Every shot he fired was precise, each one a silent vow. No one will take this family from him again. His eyes flicked constantly, scanning for any sign of threat, for any potential trap Damien might have laid. The corridor twisted, narrowed, and opened into larger chambers, but every shadow seemed to stretch and grow, hiding enemies in plain sight. As they emerged into a larger hallway, flames licked the edges of walls, igniting papers and debris, casting long, dancing shadows across the floor. The heat pressed in, thick and suffocating, but Aiden pushed forward, lifting his feet with mechanical precision, every motion a calculation to protect those he loved. He heard the faint hiss of gas, a warning of explosives set to delay or destroy. His pulse hammered in his ears as he quickly pulled Elena and the twins to safety, scanning for triggers, cutting through the panic with sheer instinct. Finally, they reached the reinforced central passage that led to a secure exit into the courtyard, the last leg of their escape. Aiden could hear Damien's men gathering behind, their voices low, precise, full of menace. The sound of combat grew closer, rifles cocking, knives drawn, every moment thick with danger. He placed Elena down momentarily, gripping the twins' hands and scanning the area with sharp, calculating eyes. Every muscle was coiled, every thought focused on survival and the safety of the family he had fought so long to reclaim. The courtyard erupted into chaos the moment they emerged. Flames consumed part of the estate, throwing eerie light across armored vehicles and scattered debris. Damien was there, tall and imposing, his presence like a shadow of death. His eyes locked on Aiden, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You think you can protect them forever?" he sneered, stepping forward with lethal confidence. Aiden's heart thundered in his chest, rage and love intertwining, sharpening his reflexes. He knew this was the moment Damien had orchestrated for years, a confrontation designed to break him. Gunfire and shouts erupted as Aiden engaged Damien's men, his movements precise, fluid, fueled by years of pent-up grief and rage. Each shot, each kick, each dodge was personal. Every strike carried the weight of 4 years lost, of imagined funerals, of silent nights, haunted by grief. Yet even amidst the chaos, he kept glancing at the children, making sure Leah and the twins were safe, ensuring Elena remained protected. Every hallway fight, every courtyard clash was a battle for the family he would never let go of again. Damien circled, patient and calculating, waiting for Aiden to falter. But Aiden did not falter. He moved with brutal efficiency, disarming men, blocking attacks, countering with precise strikes that left his enemies staggering. The fire, the smoke, the chaos of the burning estate, everything sharpened his senses, forced him to focus on the mission, protect the family. Each punch, each shot, each maneuver was a promise, a vow etched in blood and adrenaline. Finally, the moment came. Damien and Aiden faced each other in the center of the courtyard, firelight casting distorted shadows across their faces. Each held tension like a drawn bowstring, every movement deliberate, every glance a challenge. Damien lunged, fury and betrayal in every motion, while Aiden met him with controlled force, fists and feet striking with precise timing. The clash was brutal, desperate, fueled by years of hatred, grief, and love. Neither would yield easily. Blows landed, guns discharged, and sparks flew as metal collided with metal. Each movement carried the weight of stakes impossible to measure: the children's safety, Elena's life, and the reclamation of a stolen family. Aiden fought with the single-minded determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. Every action a defiance against the past, every strike a reclamation of stolen time. Damien, relentless and experienced, countered with lethal precision. But Aiden's fury and love created a force Damien had not anticipated. Finally, Damien fell, disarmed, defeated, his body hitting the ground with a finality that echoed through the courtyard. Aiden stood over him, chest heaving, hands trembling from exertion, eyes wild with emotion. But he did not strike the killing blow. He could not. His children would grow up learning strength, justice, and resilience, not revenge. Damien's reign ended not with blood on his hands, but with the certainty that his cruelty could no longer reach them. Aiden turned, heart pounding, eyes searching for Elena and the children, only to find the passageway empty. Panic surged, raw and immediate, searing through his veins. The doors he had secured, the path he had cleared, were now wide open. The family he had risked everything to protect vanished. His pulse spiked, breath catching in his throat as he sprinted onto the burning grounds, eyes scanning every shadow, every corner, every darkened window. The terror of the unknown clawed at him, threatening to drown him in despair. "Leah, twins, Elena!" he shouted, his voice raw and trembling, carrying through the courtyard like a desperate plea. Silence answered him at first, thick and suffocating. The wind carried only the crackle of flames and the distant groan of damaged walls. Every step, every heartbeat, every second stretched unbearably as he ran, the weight of fear pressing down, his mind spinning with every horrifying possibility. Had Damien's men taken them? Had they been captured in the confusion? Aiden's eyes darted across the estate, searching for any hint, any sign, any movement. Smoke curled through the air, stinging his eyes, but he would not stop. Each shadow could conceal a threat. Each flicker of movement could mean life or death. He clenched his fists, the urge to fight and protect, coiling like a steel spring in his chest. The family he thought he had saved could be lost in an instant, and he would not allow it. not again. From the far end of the estate, a faint sob reached his ears, a sound small but unmistakable. Hope ignited in his chest even as fear tightened its grip. He sprinted toward it, heart pounding, lungs burning, knowing that every second mattered, that the distance between life and tragedy was measured in mere moments. The shadows shifted around him, the firelight flickering, every movement threatening danger, every step a gamble against fate. 7. The smoke hung thick over the estate grounds, curling in heavy waves as Aiden sprinted through the chaos, adrenaline coursing through every vein of his body. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist in the firelight, every crackle of burning wood setting his nerves on edge. His eyes darted frantically in every direction, searching, scanning, desperately trying to spot the faintest movement that would tell him his family was still safe. His chest heaved, lungs burning, but he refused to slow down. Every second counted. Every heartbeat was a chance to reclaim what had almost been lost forever. Then, through the haze of smoke and the scent of scorched wood, a small, tremulous sound reached his ears. A soft, heart-wrenching sob. His stomach clenched instantly, a mix of fear and hope driving him forward. "Leah!" he called, voice raw, hoarse with urgency and desperation. The sobs became clearer, unmistakable. His legs propelled him faster, almost flying over the uneven ground, debris crunching beneath his boots. Each step was a prayer, a silent plea that the sound was real, that she was alive, that the family he had fought so long to protect was still whole. And then he saw her. Leah's small figure trembling, standing near the estate gate, eyes wide and wet with tears. Relief and terror collided in Aiden's chest, forcing his pulse into a frantic rhythm. She saw him at the same instant, and her tiny arms shot out instinctively, her legs carrying her forward despite fatigue, fear, and the weight of everything she had endured. "Papa!" she cried, the sound tearing through the smoke and fire like a beacon. Aiden's heart shattered and mended in the same moment, tears welling and spilling down his cheeks as he swept her up into his arms. Clinging to him with all the strength she could muster, Leah buried her face into his shoulder, sobbing freely, the fear and tension of the past hours erupting at last. The twins, too, ran toward him, tiny hands gripping the fabric of his coat as though he were the only solid thing in a world of chaos. Elena stood a few steps behind, holding the twins close to her chest, her body trembling, legs weak from exhaustion and blood loss, but her eyes never leaving him. Aiden held all of them, each child pressed tightly against him, feeling their small bodies quiver with fear and relief. His arms ached, not from strain, but from the overwhelming magnitude of this reunion. His voice, thick with emotion, whispered into the night, "I found you. I will never lose you again." Each word was a promise, a vow sealed with every drop of blood and sweat he had spilled for them. Elena leaned forward, resting against him, her own tears streaking down her face, her voice trembling with the weight of what they had survived. "Are we finally done running?" she whispered, barely audible over the crackle of fire and the distant wails of alarms. Her question hung in the air, fragile yet heavy with longing. Aiden cupped her face gently, brushing damp hair from her forehead, his thumb tracing the faint lines of exhaustion and fear etched into her skin. "Yes," he said firmly, voice steady despite the storm inside him. "No more hiding. You're home." The word home carried weight beyond walls and security. It carried the gravity of love reclaimed, of a life nearly lost but finally restored. Elena's lips trembled into a small, fragile smile, her eyes bright despite exhaustion, her heart finally allowing a glimmer of peace. The estate, though scarred and burning in places, no longer felt like a battlefield. Every step toward the inner grounds was a step toward normalcy, toward reclaiming a life stolen for too long. Aiden's eyes scanned the surroundings, ensuring no threat remained, but his heart already knew. The danger that had haunted them for years was finally behind them. Damien's threat was gone, his reach ended, leaving only the family and the fragile promise of peace. Slowly, Aiden led them into the inner courtyard, a safe zone he had fortified over months of planning. The children clung to him still, their sobs subsiding into quiet whimpers as relief replaced terror. He lowered them gently, holding their hands, letting them see that he was there, that they were safe, that the nightmare had finally passed. Leah's small fingers intertwined with his, and the twins' little palms pressed against his chest, each touch a confirmation of presence, of survival, of love. Elena sank to the ground beside them, still holding the twins, letting the weight of exhaustion finally overtake her. Aiden knelt beside her, brushing strands of hair from her face, inhaling the scent that had haunted his dreams for 4 long years. He could feel the tremor in her body, the lingering fear, but he also felt relief, resilience, and the unspoken promise that this was their moment to reclaim. No one would take them from him again. Time seemed suspended in that moment. No alarms, no threats, no shadows, just the quiet hum of survival and the fragile, trembling laughter of a family reunited. Aiden studied each of them, memorizing every feature, every expression, every gesture of life he had once feared lost forever. Leah blinked up at him, still trembling, and whispered, "Papa, we're together." Her voice carried innocence, hope, and the faintest trace of disbelief, as though even she could not fully comprehend that this was real. Aiden's chest tightened, a combination of exhaustion, relief, and love pressing down. He hugged them all again, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders, replaced by the warmth and fragility of family. Elena leaned against him, her voice a soft murmur. "We can finally rest, can't we?" Aiden pressed his lips to her forehead, holding her tightly. "Yes, we can finally rest. No more running, no more fear." The sun began to rise, casting golden light across the ruined but still standing estate, illuminating the scars of their past while signaling the promise of a new beginning. Aiden led them inside, through halls that were no longer battlegrounds but spaces filled with safety and the echoes of laughter waiting to return. Every corner, every wall, every familiar touch reminded him of what had been stolen and what they would rebuild. Days turned into weeks, and Aiden kept his promise. Damien was gone. Justice served, and the family slowly began to stitch together the frayed edges of their lives. They laughed again, cautiously at first, then freely, filling the halls with sounds of joy, small voices, and the rhythm of life once thought impossible. Leah's giggles echoed down the hallways as she played with her brothers, their small hands clutching each other and their parents, a testament to the bonds that had survived every trial. Night after night, Aiden watched Elena settle beside him. The twins nestled against their mother, Leah holding his hand as he wrapped them all in his arms. He felt the warmth of their small bodies, the gentle rhythm of their breathing, and the soft cadence of their whispered words. Life had returned, fragile yet undeniable. Every tear, every scar, every whisper of fear from the past now became a foundation for something stronger: love, trust, and the certainty that they were finally whole. And every night, as the quiet settled and the world felt safe once more, Elena would press her lips against Aiden's chest, whispering 4 words that encapsulated everything they had endured, everything they had reclaimed, everything that had survived against impossible odds. "Love brought you back." The words reverberated through him, healing every wound, mending every fracture of his heart, and sealing the promise that no force on earth could ever tear them apart again. Thank you for watching Heart-Woven Tales. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you never miss another emotional journey. Your support keeps these stories alive. Until next time, stay safe, stay loved, and keep your heart open for the next tale.